Hello there, person from the future. This is Divyansh, Customer Success Manager at Spur. And in this video, we're going to look at a new feature that Spur has, which we like to call custom fields. Custom fields are essentially variables that you can make within Spur. And you can use these variables to store any information about your customers or anyone whose contact you've acquired across any different channel and store them in Spur and use them for various different flows. And of course, we can also look at segments with custom fields, right? So yeah, let's get started. To create a custom field, the first thing that we want to do is go to database in our Spur account and then click on custom fields. There's a new tab here called custom field. And then we can click on new user field here to create a custom field. Now, you have a lot of types of custom fields that you can create, right? You can create a text type, you can create a number type, a boolean, and a date type. Essentially, what kind of information do you want to store about a particular person, right? So if you want to store anything, right, any alphanumeric characters, right, be it their name, well, the name, of course, we already have, let's say their address. So we'll store their address. So we'll use the text type here. But let's say if we were storing some other information like their date of birth, for example, we would have used date. If we wanted to store a particular number, right? So let's say their AOV, average order value, or how many orders they've placed on a store, right? So if you want to store all of that information someplace in a custom field, you can do that. But of course, these two things you won't actually need because Spur has variables for these already for creating segments. But yes, if you wanted these separately or if you wanted to supply that information from an external platform, you can create a custom field for that. And the last thing that we have is Boolean. So Boolean is essentially whether something is true or false. If I set this type as Boolean, I can either set this value to true or I can set this value to false. So if I set it to true, that means they like strawberries. And if I set it to false, that means they don't like strawberries. And I can also set a default value. So that means if a particular person by default, if a new contract has been created, what should their preference be saved as, right? So by default, I can make it so that everyone who is on my store likes strawberries or they don't like strawberries. And of course, I can overwrite it for individual instances, but by default, it will be false for everyone or true for everyone. So I can work with that. And of course, we can have default values with other field types as well, where let's go back to our address example. So let's say you want to set a default address for every new contact, you can do that. And let's go back to our date example. If you want to set a default date of birth for anyone, you can do that and same it now. Let's go ahead with our address example. I'll click on create here. And you can see that my custom field has been created where the name of the field is address and the type is text. All right, that's essentially it. It was, a 3-step process where I went to custom fields section, clicked on new user field, and then I created my custom field by writing the name and selecting the type. So I have created my custom field. Now let's try and use this custom field. So let's first look at how we can use this in an automation, right? So let's create a flow where they can request time slots for pickups or deliveries for certain items, right? It could be for any business. So let's just make a flow for that. So in the starting trigger, I'm going to start this trigger based on a keyword where the other person talks about booking a slot. So book slot, right? So I've added a keyword trigger where I've written book slot so that we can book their slot. And next up, I'm going to use my custom field to confirm whether we have their address or not. If we don't have their address, we'll ask for their address. But if we do have their address, we won't ask for their address. So I'll just connect this to this, that as soon as someone has written book slot, I'll add a condition. So I clicked on plus icon and I clicked on condition to create this condition. You can see when I click on select variable in the variable list at the very bottom, I have a new custom field called address. Now I'm going to click on address and I'm going to select this one. And in the list of parameters here, I'm going to select as any value. Essentially, if we have their address, do something. If we don't have their address, do something else, right? So there are two branches that I can create here. One is for we already have their address, and one is for if we don't already have their address. I mean, in the case where I don't have their address, I'm going to first ask for their address. So I'm just going to connect this to this. I'm going to click to add a message. Then at the very bottom, I'll find address, right? And I'm going to ask for their address. Please provide your address, right? Next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to show this in flow data so that it populates as a flow variable, right? So we're basically saving this address locally. So we are calling it address, or we can call it provided address, so as to not confuse it with the address that we have here, right? So provided address is what we are calling this. I'm going to save this. And next up, I'm also going to now save whatever address the person has given us in the custom field, right? You don't want to ask them their address again when they come, because we have this branch for when we already have their address, right? So what I'm going to do for that is I created an action, and then in the action, I'm going to select an action for set custom field, which is right here. And I'm going to select the custom field that we created, address. You can see that it's already here. I can clear the existing field value if I like. So in this case, it's going to be empty for whoever's address is not there. So I don't need to do that. But if I want to do that in any circumstance, I can, right? And where it says enter field value, I'll select provided address. Essentially what I've done here is I've asked for their address. I've saved it as provided address. And then after they've given me their address, I've saved it forever in the address custom field. Now, last thing, after they've given their address, I want to give them some option to select a time slot. So I'm gonna select text with buttons. Please select a time slot, and the button name here will be slot 1, slot 2, and then slot 3, right? You can of course make up as many slots if you like by using list messages, or you can of course name these if you already have to. So yes, this is my flow, and in case I already have their address, I don't want to ask for their address. I want to straight away show the time slot thing. So I'm just going to connect this to this. So as you can see, we created two branches here. One branch was for people whose address we didn't have. In that branch, we asked their address and we saved that address forever, right? And in the other branch, in the cases where we already have their address, we straight away ask them for the time slot. All right. I'm going to enable this and I'm going to save this, and let's try it out. So I have WhatsApp open here. So this is the account, and I'm going to type in okay. There you go. And you can see I have gotten the first message here. Please provide your address. I have gotten that because I don't have an address already saved, right? I'll click on provide address here. So I'll just on. You can see that the address field is opened. I can fill in my name. So my name is Divyansh. I can type in my phone number, whatever phone number I have, right? And then can give my address details, right? 382470 Lane, right? Landmark, ABCD city, right? So I can give all of these details, and date was, let's call it 10. I'll click on send address, and this address is now saved in a custom field. Next up, you can see that I have the option for selecting a time slot. That's what I selected. So I can select any time slot that I want. And of course, there's no flow after this. So my query is assigned to an agent because that's the default reply. But yes, you can see that this is how the flow works. Now, my address, since I've used this action block to save it as a custom field, is now saved in the system. So if I, for example, trigger this flow again by typing book slot, right? I'll just type in book slot and send that. You can see that instead of getting the provide address message, I directly got the time slot message because my address has been saved, right? You can check my address in my very first execution. It is saved under provided address. So I can see it here. I created a workflow variable for provided address, but in the second instance, I did not have to provide any address. So it's not in the table. If I want to, I can also show it in the table in the second instance as well without asking them for the address. I can populate that workflow variable with the address that is already in the custom field in this branch. So yes, now the data is saved with my contact. If I go to database and if I look at the contact, you can see that there is a custom field for address. If you export this contact, I will be able to export the address alongside, right? So yeah, that's how that works. Now let's also look at segments. So you can use custom fields in segments. I'll start from scratch. So here's a segment and I can go to customer info, and here at the very bottom there is a new option for custom field address. And of course it will be different for whatever case you have, whatever data you have stored. In case of address, I can select is or contains, and I can select India. So everyone whose address contains the word India, I can create a segment for that. And if the custom field was Boolean, I could have selected true and false. Like if this was a date type, I could have selected maybe who has been born before the year 2000 and who's been born after the year 2000. So yes, I can use custom fields and segments. And of course, using those segments, I can create broadcasts and I can create different experiences. So there's that. And the last thing that we want to look at is within shared inbox, you can see that the custom fields are populated here, right? So you can see that if I click on edit, I can edit this from here directly if there's any need for that. But of course, I can see custom fields here. So if there's any information about a particular customer that you want to save, you can save this in custom fields. You of course have customer notes here. You have tags, input tags, those also work. But if you want to have it in a tabulated form, if you want to have it in an export table format, if you want to have it in a format where it's usable in automations and such, you can have custom fields, right? So if I'm talking to this person and if I want to mark them as unhappy or something, I can create a custom field for unhappy and I can set it to true while talking to them in the shared inbox, right? And of course, this custom field has been created for other people as well. So as we can see that their address is empty for this person, but yes, their custom field is also with us. So yeah, that's about it with custom fields. And yeah, you can use them when you're importing contacts. Let's also look at that. So when you click on import, right, I can go to the sample CSV link. I can click on make a copy, right? And you can see that this is the sample sheet that we have. I'll delete, let's say, these details here. But you can see that in the sample sheet that we have, there is already a provision for custom fields here. So what you can do is if you have their addresses in our case, let's say, addresses stored separately on a different platform and you want to import them into Spur to use them, you can import them here. So I can just add anybody's number. If I have their email, I'll add their email, right? And I can add their name. And of course, the channel will be WhatsApp because we're contacting them on WhatsApp. If I have any of these other things, I can add that. I'm opting them into marketing messages and I can add their address, which is ABCD city, right? So I can add their address and I can import all of these custom fields. I don't have to fill those in manually for each and every contact. I can import them and I can just download this CSV and then import that into Spur to have addresses populated for all of my phone numbers automatically, right? So this custom field will be assigned to this phone number, whatever phone number I put here, right? If I put a different phone number, that address will be assigned to that phone number. The basis for all contacts is their phone number, right? All of this information is assigned to this particular phone number. So yes, that's how custom fields work. That's how importing custom fields work. That's how using them in segments work. And that's how using them in shared inbox and automations works. So yeah, have a great day. Bye-bye.